Verse for opening a sutra. The unsurpassed profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of aeons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. The Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 6, Vairochana. At that time, Universal Worthy Bodhisattva further addressed the great assembly, saying, Disciples of the Buddha, going back to the remote past, passing through kalpas as many as 5 modes of dust in world systems, and further doubling that number, there was a sea of world systems called lighter purity of the universal door. Within that sea of world systems was a world named Supreme Sound, which was supported by a sea of nets of money flowers. It had worlds as many as 5 modes of dust in Mount Sumeru as its retinue. It took the shape of a perfect circle. Its earth was composed throughout of limitless adornments, a myriad jeweled trees, 300 rows deep, together with a ring of mountains, entirely encircled it. Jeweled clouds hovered over it. It was pure, without defilement, and illuminated by light. Its cities, towns, and palaces were likened to Mount Sumeru. Clothing, food, and drink arrived according to one's thoughts. Its kalpa was named variously adorned. Disciples of the Buddha. Within that world's supreme sound was a sea of fragrant waters called pure light, and from within that sea an immense Mount Sumeru, shaped like a lotus flower, arose, called banner of universal adornments of blazing flowers, encompassed by 10 jeweled railings. On top of that mountain was a great forest called wheels of blossoming money branches. Innumerable floral pavilions and jeweled parapets entwined it in order. There were numberless banners, wonderfully fragrant, and jeweled mountain banners, most sublime and magnificent. There were numberless jeweled pundarika flowers, blooming profusely. Numberless nets of fragrant money lotus flowers surrounded it and trailed down. There was the sound of harmonious music, and there were boundless fragrant clouds shimmering with brilliant light. Millions of kotis of nayutas of cities completely surrounded it, and the living beings inhabiting them were of many different kinds. Disciples of the Buddha. East of that forest was a great metropolis called Blazing Light. It was governed by a human king. Millions of kotis of nayutas of cities completely surrounded it. The inner city, which extended 7,000 yojanas vertically and 7,000 yojanas horizontally, was composed of pure and wonderful jewels. Its outer walls were composed of the 7 precious stones. Its towers and parapets for repelling enemies were all lofty and beautiful. The city moat, inlaid with the 7 jewels, was filled to its brim with fragrant waters. Utpala flowers, Padma flowers, Kumuda flowers, and Pundarika flowers, wrought from a multitude of gems, were spread out everywhere as ornaments, and 7 rings of precious tala trees encompassed it. The palaces and towers were adorned with many jewels. A variety of wonderful nets were draped over them. Rubbing incense and fragrant lustrous flowers were scattered throughout. There were millions of kotis of nayutas of entrance ways, entirely embellished with jewels. In front of each one of those gates hung 49 precious sila banners in orderly array. Moreover, there were millions of kotis of parks and groves, encircling it all around, within which were various kinds of blended incense money trees, whose fragrance were pervasive. A multitude of birds sang in harmony, delighting those who heard them. Of those people who dwelt in that great city, none had not accomplished the karmic reward of the complete spirit. They ascended space in their coming and going, and their activities were identical to those of the gods. Whatever they wished for appeared in response to their thoughts. To the south of that metropolis was a Deva city called Tree Adorned with Flowers. To the right of that city was a big city of dragons called Ultimate, and next to that was a city of Yakshas called Banner of Supremely Wonderful Vajra. Next in succession was a city of Gandharvas called Marvelous Palace, and next to that was a city of Asuras called Jeweled Wheel. Next in order was a city of Garudas called Wonderful Jeweled Adornments, and next to that was a city of Kinnaras called Rambling in Playful Sport. Next was a city of Mahoragas called Vajra Curtain, and next to that was a city of Brahma Heaven Kings called Various Wonderful Adornments. And there were others such as those, millions of kotis of Nayutas in all. Each one of those cities had millions of kotis of Nayutas of pavilions completely encircling it, all limitlessly adorned. Disciples of the Buddha. Within the forest wheels of blossoming money branches, there was a way place called Jeweled Flowers Universally Illuminating. It was bedecked with an array of magnificent jewels and a profusion of wreaths of money flowers in full bloom. The fragrant oils used to burn in its lamp glowed with a complete spectrum of jeweled colors, forming resplendent blazing clouds and nets of universally illuminating light. From its full array of ornaments, there continually welled forth exquisite gems. The strains of its music were consistently elegant and refined. From regal money jewels emerged images of bodhisattvas. An assortment of wondrous flowers were scattered everywhere throughout the 10 directions. In front of that way place was a great sea called Fragrant Money Vajra. From it emerged a huge lotus flower called Flaming Wheels of Flower Buds. Its blossom was vast and magnificent, hundreds of kotis of yojanas in size. Its stem, leaves, filaments, and calyx were all of wondrous jewels. 10 clusters of ineffable hundreds of thousands of kotis of nayutas of lotus flowers encircled it. It perpetually emitted light and wondrous sounds which universally pervaded the 10 directions. Disciples of the Buddha, during the very first kalpa of that world called Supreme Sound, thus come one, as many as 5 motes of dust in 10 Mount Sumerus appeared in the world. The first of those Buddhas was called Sumeru Supreme Cloud of a Mountain of Merit and Virtue. Disciples of the Buddha, you should know that 100 years before that Buddha was about to appear in the world, the forest wheels of blossoming money branches was everywhere adorned and purified. That is to say, inconceivable flaming jeweled clouds came forth, which emitted sounds praising the Buddha's merit and virtue, and proclaiming their numberless tongues. And the clouds emitted light, forming nets which extended over the 10 directions. The palaces and pavilions mutually illuminated one another. Bright lights from jeweled flowers ascended and gathered together to form clouds, which further emitted more wondrous sounds, proclaiming the vast and great good roots cultivated by all living beings in days gone by, proclaiming the names of all the Buddhas of the 3 periods of time, proclaiming the conduct and vows which all bodhisattvas practice as they cultivate the ultimate way, and proclaiming the various words spoken by the thus come one as they turn the wonderful Dharma wheel. In that way, there manifested all such marks of adornment, auguring the Buddha's imminent appearance in the world. When the kings of that world saw those omens, their good roots became mature. All of them wishing to see the Buddha came to the way place. At that time, the Buddha Sumeru supreme cloud of a mountain of merit and virtue suddenly emerged from within his way place inside the great jeweled lotus and appeared. His universally pervasive body merged with the true Dharma realm as he manifested, taking birth in all the Buddha lands. All the other way places appeared within his way place. His boundless, wondrous form was impeccably pure, and nothing in the world could obscure its brilliance. It was replete with a multitude of precious marks, each one of them distinct and clear. His image appeared in every palace so that all living beings were able to see him before their own eyes. From his body emanated limitless transformation Buddhas and varicolored lights which completely filled the world. Just as the Buddha manifested the body and sat upon a throne within the great forest called Wheels of Blossoming Money Branches, on the summit of Mount Sumeru banner of universal adornments of blazing flowers, in the sea of fragrant waters of pure light, so too the Buddha appeared in a body and sat upon the throne on each one of the 68,000 kotis of Sumeru mountain peaks of the world's supreme sound. Then that Buddha emitted a great light from between his eyebrows. The light was called the sound of initiating all good roots, and it had rays of lights as many as fine motes of dust in 10 Buddha lands as his retinue, which completely filled all the lands of the 10 directions. The light reached all places where there were living beings ready for being tempered, and upon being touched by the light, they themselves were immediately enlightened. All their delusions and heated afflictions were put to rest. The nets of coverings were rent. The mountains of obstacles were smashed, and the turbid impurities were purged. They gave rise to great belief and understanding. They grew victorious good roots. They came to be eternally apart from all difficulties, fears, and worries. All the sufferings and anguish of their bodies and minds were eradicated, and they gave rise to the wish to see the Buddha and the inclination toward all wisdom. At that time, the world rulers and their retinues of limitless hundreds of thousands were bathed in the Buddha's light, causing them all to become enlightened. Then they all went to where the Buddha was and made obeisance at his feet. Disciples of the Buddha, in that great metropolis blazing light, lived the king, happy views, wholesome wisdom, who governed hundreds of myriads of kotis of nayutas of cities. The queens and concubines of his palace altogether numbered 37,000. Blessed auspiciousness was their leader, and he had 500 princes. Great awesome light was their leader. The Prince Great Awesome Light had 10,000 royal princesses, and Wonderful Views was their leader. At that time, upon seeing the Buddha's light, the Prince Great Awesome Light, relying on the strength of his good roots from past cultivation, immediately certified to 10 kinds of Dharma doors. What are the 10? Specifically, he certified to and attained the samadhi of all Buddhist will of merit and virtue. He certified to and attained the universal door, dharani, of all Buddha dharmas. He certified to and attained the prajna paramita of the vast great store of expedience. He certified to and attained the great adornment of using generous kindness to subdue all living beings. He certified to and attained the universal cloud of sounds of great compassion. He certified to and attained the sublime joy of producing a most exalted mind of boundless merit and virtue. He certified to and attained the vast renunciation of enlightening to all dharmas as they truly are, he certified to and attained the mighty spiritual penetration of the vast, great, impartial store of experience. He certified to and attained the mighty vows of increasing strength of faith and understanding. He certified to and attained the door of eloquence, of universally entering into the light of all wisdom. At that time, after having attained such lights of dharmas, the Prince Great Awesome Light, relying on the Buddha's awesome strength, universally regarded the great assembly and spoke verses saying, "In this way place is seated the world-honored one. His splendorous pure light, like 1,000 suns dawning, illumines the realm of space universally. Limitless kotis of millennia have passed, and now a guiding master appears. The Buddha now has come into the world. Let us all gaze upon him in reverence. You should contemplate the Buddha's light, transformation Buddhas inconceivable, within their palaces abiding, quiescent in proper samadhi. Contemplate the Buddha's spiritual penetrations. From every pore he emits glowing clouds, whose radiance reaches all world realms with inexhaustible light. Contemplate the Buddha's body. His net of light is ultimately pure. He manifests forms equal to all, which pervade the 10 directions. His wondrous sound pervades all worlds, and those who hear it are all delighted. According with living beings, in their tongues he praises the Buddha's merit and virtue. Illumined by the light of the world-honored one, all living beings are blissfully at peace. Their sufferings all cease to exist, and their hearts bring forth great joy. Regard the myriad bodhisattvas assembled here from the 10 directions. They all emit clouds of mani, which manifest praising the Buddha. From inside the way place amazing sounds come, most profound and far-reaching, and able to end all the sufferings of beings. Thus is the Buddha's spiritual might. All are reverent, all respectful, while in their hearts come forth great joy. Assembled before the world-honored one, they all gaze up at the Dharma King. Disciples of the Buddha, when that Prince Great Awesome Light spoke those verses, relying upon the Buddha's spiritual power, his voice universally pervaded the world's supreme sound. At that time, the King Happy View's wholesome wisdom, having heard those verses, was filled with great joy. He gazed upon all in his retinue and spoke verses saying, "Quickly now summon and call together the heads of state such as kings and princes, the great ministers and local officials of all the cities and rural towns. Spread the news to the public in all those townships. Beat on the great drum at once and assemble, each and every one gather together and form a procession to go see the Buddha. At all the places where roads intersect, ring out the jeweled bell, its sound reaching, wives and children and retinues all, so they gather to see the thus come one. The major cities and outlying districts should all be made clean and tidy. Everywhere set up most wondrous banners, ornamented with money gems. Spread out jeweled curtains, bountiful nets, and musical instruments, arrange them like clouds. In empty space, a magnificent display. Let every place be filled with them. Cleanse and bedeck every highway and road. Everywhere rain down exquisite garments. Polish and drive your jeweled coaches. Let us form a procession and go see the Buddha. Each in accord with his means, everyone. Everywhere rain down adorning objects. Arrange them all, display them like clouds, and densely fill empty space with them. Incense for burning, and lotus bud canopies. chrysanthemum necklaces made of jewels, and countlessly many wonderful garments. All such things you should shower down. Sweet fragrant waters from Mount Sumeru sea, and supremely splendid wheels of mani, as well as pure incense made of chandana. Shower them down and fill up empty space. A myriad finely wrought flower necklaces, pellucid adornments without any blemish, and also lamps embellished with mani. All those should be made to float in empty space. We should hold them up to present to the Buddha, as in our hearts we bring forth great happiness. Wives and sons and retinues all, let us go and behold the world-honored one. At that time, the king Happy views wholesome wisdom, and his 37,000 royal wives and ladies in waiting, with blessed auspiciousness as their leader, his 500 princes, with great awesome light as their leader, his 60,000 great ministers, with wisdom strength as their leader, and so forth, a multitude of 7,700,000 kotis of Nayutas, circumambulated from front to back, as they stream out of that great metropolis blazing light. And by the power of the king, that great multitude ascended into empty space, all of them replete with offerings which entirely filled empty space, went to where the Buddha was. They made obeisance at the Buddha's feet. Then they withdrew to one side and sat down. Moreover, from the city called Wonderful Flower came the heavenly king banner of wholesome transformations, together with his retinue of 10 kotis of Nayutas. From the great city called Ultimate came the dragon king Clear Light, together with his retinue 25 kotis. From the city Supreme Vajra Curtain came the Yaksha king, courageous and vigorous, accompanied by his retinue of 77 kotis. From the city Immaculate came the Gandharva king, Joyous Vision, accompanied by his retinue of 97 kotis. From the city Wonderful Wheel came the Asura king, Pure Thoughts, accompanied by his retinue of 58 kotis. Moreover, from the city of Wonderful Adornments came the Garuda king, 10 powers and practices, together with his retinue of 99,000. From the city Playful Joy and Delight came the Kinara king, Vajra Virtue, together with his retinue of 18 kotis. From the city Vajra Curtain came the Mahoraga king, jeweled appellation banner, along with his retinue of 3 kotis of hundreds of thousands of Nayutas. And from the city Wonderfully Pure Adornments came the Brahma king, most victorious, together with his retinue of 18 kotis. And so it went regarding all the kings and their retinues throughout hundreds of myriads of kotis of Nayutas of cities. They all amassed together and proceeded to the place of the Dusk Come One, Sumeru supreme cloud, of a mountain of merit and virtue. They reverently bowed at the Buddha's feet. Then they withdrew to one side and sat down. Then that Dusk Come One, wishing to temper the multitude of living beings, in that oceanic assembly in his way place, spoke the sutra of universally gathering in the dharmas of self-mastery of all the Buddhists of the 3 periods of time, with sutras as many as fine motes of dust in the world system as his retinue. According with the hearts of living beings, he caused them all to obtain benefit. As soon as the great awesome light Bodhisattva heard this Dharma, he at once obtained the light from the sea of Dharmas accumulated by Sumeru supreme cloud of a mountain of merit and virtue Buddha throughout past lives. He obtained the light of wisdom from the Samadhi of the multitude of Dharmas as being level and equal, the light of wisdom from all the Dharmas of dwelling in the initial resolve for Bodhi, the light of wisdom from the pure eye of universal light treasury which pervades the 10 directions of the Dharma realm, the light of wisdom from contemplating the sea of all Buddhist dharmas and vast vows, the light of wisdom from entering the boundless sea of merit and virtue, or pure practices, the light of wisdom from the storehouse of the great strength and agility to remain propelled toward non-retreat, the light of wisdom from having limitless powers of change and transformation to escape the wheel within the Dharma realm, the light of wisdom from decisively entering the sea of the perfection of limitless merit and virtue, the light of wisdom from fully fathoming the sea of decisive discernments and splendid accomplishments, the light of wisdom from completely comprehending the sea of the Buddhist spiritual penetrations, which enable them to appear before all living beings, boundlessly throughout the Dharma realm, the light of wisdom from thoroughly understanding the dharmas of all Buddhist powers and fearlessnesses. At that time, great awesome light Bodhisattva obtained limitless lights of wisdom such as those, and relying on the Buddha's awesome strength, he spoke verses saying, "Hearing the Buddha's wonderful Dharma, I've obtained lights of wisdom, thereby seeing the world on it once, and diverse from ancient times past. Every place where they took birth, their various names and characteristics, to their making of offerings to all Buddhas, such things I witness entirely. How, from time now ancient, in those Buddhas' dwellings, they served and attended them, each and all, cultivated and practiced through limitless kalpas to adorn and make pure all kshatriya seas. How they renounced their own physical bodies extensively and without exhaustion, while cultivating most supreme conduct to adorn and make pure all kshatriya seas. Ears, nose, heads, hands, and feet, as well as all their palaces, they gave up without exhaustion to adorn and make pure all kshatriya seas. In each and every world they were able, throughout inconceivable millions of aeons, to practice and cultivate bodhi conduct and adorn and make pure all kshatriya seas. By the strength of universal worthies' vows, amid the ocean of all Buddhas, they cultivated limitless conduct to adorn and make pure all kshatriya seas. Just as it is by the sun's brilliant light one is able to see the solar disk, so too I, by the light of the Buddha's wisdom, see the way practiced by all the Buddhas. I regard the oceans of all Buddha lands, pure and brilliant, vast in scope. In still quiescence, I am certified to Bodhi and completely pervade the entire Dhamma realm. I should emulate the world on it one and vastly make pure the seas of all worlds. By the power of the Buddha's awesome spirit, I should cultivate the Bodhi conduct, disciples of the Buddha. At that time, great awesome light Bodhisattva, from having seen, served, and made offerings to Sumeri's supreme cloud of a mountain of merit and virtue Buddha, then in the presence of that thus come one, obtained an enlightened mind, and for the sake of all living beings, he manifested the sea of the thus come one's practices from remote times past. He manifested the clever expedients practiced by bodhisattvas from remote times past. He manifested the seas of merit and virtue of all Buddhas. He manifested the pure wisdom of universally entering all Dharma realms. He manifested within all way places the power of self-mastery in accomplishing Buddhahood. He manifested the Buddha's non-differentiating wisdom, powers, and fearlessnesses. He manifested the universally appearing body of the thus come ones. He manifested the Buddha's inconceivable spiritual transformation. He manifested the purification and adornment of limitless Buddha lands. He manifested all the practices and vows of universal worthy Bodhisattva. Thus he caused as many living beings as their dust motes in Mount Sumeru to bring forth the Bodhi-mind. He enabled as many living beings as their dust motes in Buddha lands to perfect the pure lands of the dust come ones. Thereupon, for the sake of the great awesome light Bodhisattva, Sumeru supreme cloud of a mountain of merit and virtue Buddha spoke verses saying, "Good indeed, great awesome light, O treasury of blessing, of vast renown, in order to benefit living beings, you have excelled in the Bodhi way. You have obtained wisdom's light, completely pervading the Dharma realm, as well as vast blessings and lofty virtue. Your wisdom will soon be as deep as the sea. In a single land you have cultivated, through kalpas equal to dust motes in Kshatriyas. Now that you have seen me, you should obtain wisdom, which is thus. By never being of lowly conduct, one can understand clever expedients and obtain the power of great vigor with which to purify Kshatriya's seas. Within each and every mote of dust, cultivating through infinite time, such a person as this is able to adorn all the Buddha lands. For each and every living beings, you turn on the wheel throughout oceans of time, your mind never growing lax or weary. The world's guiding master you soon should become. You make offerings to all Buddhas, even to the bounds of the future. Your mind never fatigued or satisfied. You shall soon attain the unsurpassed way. All Buddhas of the 3 periods of time will help you quickly fulfill your vows, and within the assemblies of all Buddhas, you will, in person, peacefully abide. All thus come one's vows, and resolutions have no end. One whose wisdom vastly penetrates can understand such expedients. Great light made offerings to me. Thus he obtains great awesome power to enable beings in number like dust motes to mature in their inclination to Bodhi. All who practice like universal worthy become renowned Bodhisattvas. They adorn seas of Buddha lands as they entirely pervade the Dharma realm. Disciples of the Buddha, you ought to know within that great adorned kalpa, there were small kalpas as many as grains of sand in the Ganges River. The average lifespan of its people was 2 small kalpas. Disciples of the Buddha, that Buddha Sumeru supreme cloud of a mountain of merit and virtue lived for 50 kotis of years. After his extinction, another Buddha entered the world by the name of good king adorned with eyes of prajna, who within the great forest wheels of blossoming money branches likewise attained proper enlightenment. At that time, as soon as pure youth, great awesome light, saw that thus come one attain equal and proper enlightenment, he manifested the power of spiritual penetrations and immediately attained the samadhi of mindfulness of the Buddha called door to the boundless sea treasury. He immediately attained the great kindness called rescuing and liberating, tempering and taming by universally according with living beings. He immediately attained the great compassion called cosmic cloud covering all states. He immediately attained the great joy called the treasury of the awesome power of all Buddhas' seas of merit and virtue. He immediately attained the great renunciation called the Dharma nature's purity, which is equal to the void. He immediately attained the prajna paramita called the Dharma realm's pure body of the self-nature, which is apart from filth. He immediately attained the spiritual penetration called unobstructed brilliance that universally adapts and manifests. He immediately attained the skill in debate called skillful deep entry to the origin apart from filth. He immediately attained the light of wisdom called the pure treasury of all Buddha Dharmas, and of 10,000 Dharma doors such as those he attained complete penetration. Then the pure youth, great awesome light, relying on the Buddha's awesome spiritual strength, and for the sake of all his retinue, spoke verses saying, "Even once in inconceivable kotis of kalpas, an enlightened master, a guide for all worlds, is hard to meet. Fortunate are the living beings of this land, for now they get to see a second Buddha. Universally emitting great light, the Buddha's body, its form and marks limitless, most pure, extensively covers all lands like a cloud, everywhere praising the Buddha's merit and virtue. The light brings joy to all where it shines, completely ridding those beings of suffering, and causing them all to be reverent and kind. Thus does the Daskam One's self-mastery function. Clouds of inconceivable transformations come forth, forming a limitless net of bright hues that spreads over all lands in the 10 directions. Thus do the Buddha's spiritual penetrations manifest. From his every pore he emits clouds of light, which put forth sublime sounds that pervade empty space, and even illumine the gloom of the hells. Completely extinguishing hell-being sufferings, the Daskam One's voice, wondrous, pervades 10 directions, completely extending to every language. It accords with all beings wholesome strength from the past. Thus do the great Master's spiritual transformations function. The vast sea of multitudes is limitless and boundless. The Buddha manifests among them all, as he turns universally, without exhaustion, the wonderful Dharma wheel, taming and tempering the masses of beings. The might of the Buddha's spiritual penetrations is boundless. As he enters and appears in all kshetras, the well-gone one with wisdom unobstructed achieves proper enlightenment to benefit beings. All should be greatly happy at heart, jump for joy in adoration, yet display deepest reverence. For now we will go to the Buddha's abode, and upon seeing the Buddha, your many sufferings will cease. Bring forth the mind of transference, and aspire toward Bodhi. Hold kind thoughts towards all living creatures, fully dwelling in universal worthy vows, will attain the self-mastery of the Dharma King. Disciples of the Buddha, when the pure youth, great awesome light, spoke those verses, relying on the Buddha's spiritual might, the sound of his voice was unobstructed and could be heard absolutely everywhere throughout all worlds. Limitless living beings brought forth the Bodhi resolve. Then the Prince, great awesome light, together with his father and mother and his entire retinue, as well as limitless hundreds of thousands of kotis of nayutas of other living beings, circumambulated the Buddha in a continuous procession. Above the Buddha, jeweled clouds massed together, forming a canopy which extended throughout empty space. Together, the Prince and his retinue gathered around the Buddha, good king adorned with eyes of prajna. Then that Buddha, for their sakes, spoke the sutra of the pure adornment of the substance nature of the Dharma realm, together with sutras as many as dust motes in seas of worlds as his retinue. Upon hearing that sutra, all in the great assembly accomplished the lucid wisdom known as entry into all pure experience. They accomplished the ground known as the light of living filth. They accomplished the wheel of paramita known as manifesting the adornments in which all worlds delight. They accomplished the increasing and expanding wheel of practice known as universally entering all Buddha lands with limitless light from pure views. They accomplished the motivating wheel of conduct known as the bright curtain cloud of blessings and virtue from living filth. They accomplished the wheel of certification from compliant entry known as the vast great light of the seas of Dharma. They accomplish the ever-deepening inclination towards practice known as the adornment of great wisdom. They accomplish the wisdom sea of anointing the crown known as effortless cultivation of ultimately wonderful views. They accomplish the manifestation of vast brilliance known as reflections on the sea of the merit. They accomplish the power of pure wisdom from bringing forth vows known as the treasury of faith and understanding from the strength of limitless vows. Then that Buddha, for the sake of great awesome light Bodhisattva, further spoke verses saying, "Good indeed, your ocean of wisdom, merit, and virtue, having brought forth the mind to tend toward great Bodhi, you should, like all Buddhas, become inconceivable, a universal place of reliance for all beings. You have already brought forth vast sea-like wisdom. Pervasively, you comprehend every dharma. Marvelous killing means you should use to enter the infinite state of the Buddha's conduct. Having seen the cloud of all Buddha's merit and virtue, and ascended the ground of inexhaustible wisdom, having entered the sea of paramitas of expedience, you, O one of great renown, will perfect them. Expedient doors of gathering in and upholding you have obtained, as well as the doors of inexhaustible eloquence. You have cultivated every kind of practice and vow. Now you should accomplish incomparable vast wisdom. You have already brought forth an ocean of vows, and have already entered the sea of samadhis. You'll perfect every kind of spiritual penetration, as well as the inconceivable dharmas of all Buddhas. Encompassing the Dharma realm beyond imagining, your vast, expansive, profound mind has been made pure. You are able to see all Buddhas throughout the 10 directions. Now separate from filth, you adorn the infinite seas of Kshatriyas. You have embarked upon my practices of Bodhi and the sea of fundamental expedient deeds from days of old. Like me, you cultivate all pure disciplines. Wonderful conduct such as that you have fully realized. I have, through all the limitless Kshatriyas, made manifold offerings to the oceans of Buddhas. I've attained the fruition from identical practice, and you can comprehensively see such adornments throughout the vast, expansive, boundless sea of time and within all worlds, cultivating pure conduct and persevering in resolute, inconceivable vows. You will attain the spiritual power of a thus come one, exhaustively making offerings to Buddhas without exception, adorning their lands and making them completely pure, and cultivating through kalpas of time extraordinary practices. You shall accomplish the Buddha's supreme merit and virtue. Disciples of the Buddha, after the thus come one, good king adorned with eyes of prajna, enter nirvana. The king happy views wholesome wisdom, departed from that world, and the pure youth great awesome light succeeded to the position of a wheel-turning king. And then within that great forest, wheels of blossoming mighty branches, a third thus come one appeared in that world. His name was Ocean of most victorious merit and virtue. At that time, great awesome light wheel-turning sage king witnessed the thus come one accomplish the marks of a Buddha, and together with his retinue form massive throngs in all, and all the populace from the cities, towns, and villages, carrying with them the 7 jewels, went en masse to where the Buddha was, using all manner of grand pavilions which were adorned with fragrant money. They respectfully made offerings to the Buddha. Then in the midst of that forest, the thus come one spoke the sutra of the light of conduct of the Bodhisattva's universal eye, along with sutras as many as there are dust motes in worlds, which served as his retinue. As soon as great awesome light Bodhisattva heard that Dharma, he obtained the samadhi called universal light of abundant blessings and virtue. Because he attained that samadhi, he was able to completely know and understand all bodhisattvas, all living beings, and the sea of their blessings and ill fortunes of the past, present, and future. Then for the sake of great awesome light Bodhisattva, that Buddha spoke verses saying, "Good indeed, blessed and virtuous great awesome light, you have now come here to where I am, and from a thought of sympathy for the sea of beings, you have given rise to the great resolve for Bodhi. For the sake of suffering beings, you have brought forth the great compassionate thought to effect their liberation, one who the confused masses can draw near to and rely on, is known as a bodhisattva who practices expedience. Bodhisattvas who cultivate superior practices decisively, dauntlessly, and are never weary or lax, a most supreme and most victorious unobstructed liberation. Such wondrous wisdom as that they surely will attain. The light from your blessings and virtue is that of an auspicious banner. The domain of your blessings and virtue is that of an auspicious sea. All universal worthy bodhisattvas' vows, you, great awesome light, can aspire to and enter. You are already able to use the vast great vows to enter the inconceivable sea of all Buddhas. The sea of the Buddha's blessings has no bounds. Through wonderful liberation, you can entirely view it. You, throughout all worlds in the 10 directions, can totally perceive the limitless, boundless Buddhas and the extensive sea of all their former practices. All such things as those you can see entirely. One who abides on that sea of expedience will certainly enter the grounds of wisdom. Thus is accord with all Buddhas in study. One certainly will accomplish all wisdom. You have, amidst the seas of all worlds, and through oceans of kalpas as many as dust motes, studied the thus come one sea of practices. You shall certainly accomplish Buddhahood. The oceans of worlds which you see throughout the 10 directions are ultimately adorned and purified. So too is your own land adorned and pure. Limitless vows you will certainly fulfill. The sea-wide assembly, now at this way place, delights in hearing of the vows you have made. They all climb aboard Universal Worthy's vast great vehicle and bring forth the mind of transference to Bodhi. Within every one of the limitless lands and through oceans of kalpas you have penetrated all practices. Now, by the power of your vows, you perfect the conduct of Universal Worthy Bodhisattva. Disciples of the Buddha, within that forest, wheels of blossoming money branches, yet another Buddha entered the world. His name was Lotus Eyes Banner. His renown is universal. That was the time when great awesome light passed from that life to be reborn as a great heavenly king in the still, quiet, jeweled palace of the heavenly city situated on top of Mount Sumeru. His name was Banner of Blessings and Virtue apart from filth, and together with all the heavenly citizens, he arrived at the Buddha's place, where they rained down precious flowers as offerings. Then the Thus Come One spoke for him the vast, great, expedient, universal door, pervasively shining sutra, along with sutras as many as there are motes of dust in seas of worlds, which serve as his retinue. When that heavenly king and his devas heard that sutra, they attained the samadhi called the treasury of the universal door of happiness, and from the strength of that samadhi, they were able to enter the sea of the true mark of all dharmas. Once having obtained such benefit, they departed from that weird place and returned to their place of origin.